Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Father and Son Pastime podcast. I'm Patrick.
I'm Kevin. How are you?
That's my dad. Dad, it's finally here. Our favorite day of at least the off season, but for podcasts, it could be our favorite day.
Favorite day of the year.
It could be. I really obviously like opening day, the home run derby, the last game or the first game of the World Series. But in terms of what we do
Game
on this
7.
in terms of what we do on this podcast, I really do the most research for this day. I think obviously we record the longest. This is the day after Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving to you all. But I am thankful for baseball, Dad, and I'm thankful for the research that we're able to do for this podcast. It's not just pointless. That is hopefully for some people, for discussion, for the future generations. Mm-hmm. But we are doing the top 50 free agents and our predictions for that. It's our prediction show, if you will. We break this down into the top 10, so the Shohei Ohtani's on down, and we use the MLB Trade Rumors website's list of the top 50 free agents. And we do the first 10, and then like the 11 through 50 in a secondary video. I'm sure you'll be able to see that on our channel. But we do the top 10 first to really dive into those bigger names. Sometimes they're easier to figure out, and sometimes they're harder. Last year, my dad, I think, went 7 for 10 or 8 for 10, just in the top 10 alone.
I did the first 7 correctly until Correa switched. So
regardless, you did really well in the first 10, and the bottom 40, you're like, I don't care. And mine was kind of all over the place, but I did not really do the top 10 well. I'm hoping for a different outcome this year, Dad. The mistake I did last year is I did it too early. I had all of my predictions done by like November 10th, November 11th last year. I did it really quickly after the World Series, and I never really updated it as the few signings happened or the few trades happened up until Black Friday. I technically finished this list at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on November 24th, just a couple hours before this podcast. Made a few minor switches and a few minor tweaks, so I'm very excited to share my list. I think a lot of people are waiting for us to talk about Shohei Ohtani. He is obviously our number one name on the list. Dad, is there anything you need to talk about or share before we get into Ohtani?
I'm thinking, just a little bit of background. Last year, baseball did better than, a whole bunch of years in the past. They really had a record-setting year for revenue, attendance, all those things. The other thing I want to bring up is if you make the playoffs in baseball, you got a darn good chance of advancing yourselves to the World Series. The last 2 years, the wild cards have, got themselves in a position to play in the World Series. So I think teams are starting to see that as long as you get to the dance floor, you got a chance. And I think, you're talking Arizona and the Phillies that didn't have the best record in their league, but got hot the right time. And all of a sudden they advanced, got to the World Series. Texas as well. It's kind of like now, do the GMs say, hey, I need to improve just to get to 85 to 90 wins so I make the playoffs? I may not win the division, but man, I just want to make the playoffs. So with that in mind, the money for free agents, I think now are like, okay, I need to build this team, but do I need to make a $50 million splash to get to that stage? I think the money this free agent class is going to be, spent wisely. Shohei is going to be the key by far. But I think there's teams that have desperate needs that can fill. I think this year you're going to see more trades than ever as well. I think there's going to be a lot of trades starting in the middle part of December.
A lot to unpack there. I do think that the trades do impact a lot of our free agent picks, or at least mine. We also do this thing called the offseason outlook for each division. So if you're like, Patrick, when you went through your top 10, you left out all the AL or NL Central teams or whatever, ends up happening. We'll go to our offseason outlook NL Central episode and see why that happened. Maybe there is just what my dad was saying. All I have to do is win 4 more games than I did last year, which means I only need to spend $12 million or $15 more million.
Many teams fall in that bracket.
The dominant I need to win the World Series in this offseason, I think that mindset's off. Let me add a few pieces, and then at the deadline I'll even more. Kind of like what the Texas Rangers or Diamondbacks did. I mean, obviously they're slightly different classes of payroll, but they had enough improvements in each offseason. They made a few more minor additions at the deadline, and they obviously both made the playoffs as wild card teams.
Yes, so we agree on that.
Yeah, I don't think that any of these signings are motivated, hey, I'm going to win my division, or I'm signing Shohei Ohtani because I want to win the first place seed in the playoffs. You are signing almost anyone because you think they can help you in the postseason or at least get to the postseason. So, yeah, without further ado, I do want to say that Aaron Nola has already been signed by Philadelphia. He was number 5 on this list, so we're going to drop down to 11, which is Eduardo Rodriguez. So we're taking a lot of pitchers in this first 10 names. A few position players were light on position players. For example, I would have never put Teoscar Hernandez as 12 overall on a free agent list. But when there's not that many names or not that many position players, you work yourself up. So Shohei, Dad, talking about these big names, there's only going to be a handful of people that can afford Shohei. He wants his offseason quiet. He says he's holding it against teams if anything gets leaked out about your meetings or, oh my God, Shohei's coming to town. Shohei's coming for a visit.
It's already happened, by the way, the leak.
So where do you think Shohei goes?
He's the key to the offseason. If you think about it, the price tag that he's going to garner is going to really make spending. I mean, let's say there's one team signs Shohei that really dwarfs the rest of the pool they have for free agents. And if they don't sign Shohei, then all of a sudden that gives them a lot more money to spend on multiple free agents. Everything that I read and everything I research is down to 2 teams, the Cubs and the Dodgers. The Cubs have some money. Dodgers have a lot of money. He's on record saying he likes to be closer to Japan. In case he needs to go over there, those type of things. Big city markets, another one of his keys. Both cities fit that bill. Both have good fan bases. I just think in the bidding war that he's going to have, I think the Dodgers have more money. Dodgers sign Shohei.
Despite you circling them, you underline interesting.
Because I changed that this morning.
Very interesting. I also have the Dodgers. I won't beat around the bush. I do think it's more than 2 teams. I think Atlanta is in serious play for Shohei. I think San Francisco is in serious play for Shohei. If I did this list or podcast 2 weeks ago, San Francisco was my pick for them because they kind of have been on record of needing this franchise player. Judge, Correa, I think they're going to lose out a third time on a franchise player in Shohei Ohtani. The Dodgers need a DH, and the Dodgers need a front-end starter.
And a star.
And what is really fun to think about, and it may not happen because obviously Kershaw's getting older, but Kershaw's out all next year. But Kershaw could come back in 2025, maybe his last hurrah. But him and Ohtani as a 1-2, and then obviously there's Walker Buehler and Gonsolin, and Dustin May will be back in 2025. I don't think the addition of Shohei Ohtani makes the Dodgers even the World Series favorite next year, but it does in 2025. It's a perennial contender. The Cubs kind of go up and down with playoffs, World Series bound, not even making the playoffs. Shohei wants to consistently make the playoffs every year.
And he's used to the West Coast.
So in my opinion, that leaves the Dodgers and the Braves. I think the Dodgers are just able to offer him a little bit more. I'm curious to see this breakdown. I don't think it's going to be just money. I think it's going to be ownership shares. I think he gets a piece of the Dodgers just like Magic Johnson has. I think it's going to be dramatic, but he doesn't have to move. He knows the city. And who doesn't want Shohei Ohtani? I'm not surprised if a mystery team comes in and grabs him. Those are my 4 expected teams. Most money is on the Dodgers, then the Braves, then the Giants, and the Cubs. I think the Cubs go after multiple more targets because they have more holes to fill than the Dodgers. Dad, we've done Shohei.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well said.
We've done Shohei. 29 fan bases are mad at us for not saying Shohei Ohtani to the Tampa Bay Rays or the Colorado Rockies.
Oakland A's.
Oakland A's. Wouldn't that be something?
He would make more money the entire team combined.
It's not hard. Anyone could at this point.
Yeah.
So I figured we'd all land on that. I made this list. I saw the MLB Trade Rumors list. I wrote it down, but I didn't look at their predictions. And then I came back and I looked at my predictions compared to them. Everyone at MLBTR also said the Dodgers. So I think that is the heavy favorites. I don't know if that's the case, but, we'll see.
They check all the boxes for Shohei. West Coast team, major market, proven winner, money.
Yeah.
It's hard to say no to the Dodgers unless, the Cubs, I just don't think have enough wealth to compete with the Dodgers. So I think they're going to make a hell of a run for him, but I think they're going to end up short.
Agreed. We don't really get into the nitty gritty on money in this podcast. We don't care so much about AAV or how many years, especially with Shohei. Whatever he wants. 500 years, $500 million a year for 50 years. Who cares? It doesn't matter to us. We just care about who he ends up with. So we won't get too much into the nitty gritty of salary. Dad, let's move on to a former Dodger, Cody Bellinger. Very interesting story. I want to paint the picture because I know he was a Cub for you this year. We got one of the youngest MVPs ever. Then awful. So awful that the Dodgers non-tendered him an offseason ago. Picked up by the Cubs on a very affordable, 1-year chance. Killed it. Absolutely monster year comeback. Healthy. Could play multiple positions. Obviously, he's still young. He's one of our younger free agents on this list because of how
still
quickly.
Still in his 20s.
Yeah. Obviously has center field talent. I believe he has multiple Gold Gloves. Can play first base if needed. I'm sure he could learn the corners at some point. He's going to command a lot of money. I think just because he's number 2 on this list doesn't mean he's a sure thing. He could have a regression. He could be another MVP candidate. It's the first big risk I think you're getting for this amount of money. Dad, who do you have Cody Bellinger going to?
This is a team that tried to trade for Cody at the deadline desperately, and the Cubs made a decision to hang on to Cody and go for a wild card or division title. The Yankees want him desperately. Yankees need a lot of new blood. A pull hitter in Yankee Stadium is also inviting. Rizzo didn't have the year that he wanted to have. Stan didn't have. Cody fits so many holes the Yankees have. I think they will sign him for a lucrative contract, and I think he ends up in New York.
I promise we'll have something different at some point, folks, but I also have the Yankees. I was going to say this if you went with the Cubs for Shohei, but I'm sure you'll have some big free agent coming to the Cubs soon. If you look at the Cubs and the Mariners being a game away from the playoffs, just missing it, and you see, if you're the Cubs, you could clearly make an argument, and I don't think it's a fair argument, but you could make the argument that if we won one more game, we'd be where Arizona was, and we could have competed in the World Series.
Yeah.
They could have been out first round, folks. But if you're a true diehard fan, you're saying that could have been us. Same with the Mariners. You're seeing someone in your division in the AL West that's never won a World Series before, just like you, go and win it on a wild card basis. Could that have been you, one win in?
Yeah, Seattle's in first place for a while.
Yes. Anyways, so were the Cubs, right? The Cubs had first place for a little while.
They were always trying to get there, but no. Not
okay, I thought there was a couple of games where they were better than the Brewers. Anyways, that's going to make those teams that were just shy of it try a little harder. But you know what's going to be the biggest try hard of the offseason? The Yankees. Because they didn't make the playoffs. And they're used to it. They were only 2 games above 500. They flirted with being under 500 for the first time since the early 90s, folks. 82 and 80 is not a acceptable framework by anyone in New York. They have, fans have been telling the Yankees and screaming, we have the shortest right field fence in baseball. So let's get lefties who turn on the ball and just have to loft it a little far, and it's gone. They are a team of right-handed hitters. If they have any sense, they sign left-handed hitters or trade for left-handed hitters this offseason.
Similar to the Orioles did.
Right. Because your ballpark is designed for lefties. If you go out and sign, I don't know, let's just say Matt Chapman. He's a righty. Not that the Yankees are connected to Chapman. It makes no sense. They really do need to balance out their lineup with lefties. They have the money because it's New York, and they also have the desire to be a contender again. They're not going to be okay seeing the Orioles, the Rays, and the Blue Jays all finish above them, and the Red Sox only a few games behind. We'll get to the Red Sox soon, but the Yankees are not. Hunger is not the correct word. They're foaming at the mouth to prove that they are the goddamn Yankees. So let's see them nut up or shut up.
And don't forget, Cody in New York has all those marketing, advertising possibilities. Sure. So his
He's
income,
attractive, yeah.
his income level could skyrocket in New York with all the commercials and promotional activities. So I think it's going to be full court press.
I hope it is, because I kind of miss the Red Sox-Yankee rivalries. It's fun to see a hometown Baltimore team do well, but it's more fun to see people go absolutely apeshit and buy $400 million in players and just compete. That's why it was fun to watch the Mets last offseason. You don't want to watch these mid-market teams go at it. I'm sorry. I don't like the David and Goliath story. I want to see two damned Goliaths kill each other. That's fun. So I hope that gets back to that again. Dad, third, we have several Japanese players that obviously performed very well last year in the World Baseball Classic. Have been posted or will be posted, expected to be posted. Yamamoto has been posted. Pretty much any team will be interested in a frontline young starter in Yamamoto from Japan. Where's he going, Dad?
You know what? The Yankees are building, and I think he goes there. He is also very young. He's mid-20s.
He's 25.
Yeah, so he'll go long-term.
I agree.
And I think with a lot of the players that are coming from Japan/Korea, they want Asian players on the team with them. I think right now that's one of his stipulations. But again, New York being the United Nations of cities in the United States, I think there's a background for him. I think he'll sign a lucrative contract with the Yankees, maybe 6 to 8 years.
Funny, I had it down to two contenders, and it's Boston and the Yankees. This is really the only big move Boston does this offseason in terms of signings. There's one else on the list in the second half of the show. But I have Boston. I really think just a little bit more of a need. The Yankees have a Cy Young winner in Cole. Hopefully Rodon turns it around. They have a clear number 2, and then they can, fill the back end. As Sale is a shell of his former self with all his injuries and eventually becomes a free agent, the Red Sox will lack a dominant ace. Pitching was our biggest concern last year. We had one of the highest run-scoring total numbers to not make the playoffs because we gave up so many runs against us. Our offense was not a problem. It wasn't. It was one of actually the best offenses in baseball. I believe it was a top 5 or top 6 offense. But pitching, that's one of the highest ERAs in baseball. So this guy, I've looked at his Japanese stats. I don't think he's ever had an ERA over 2 in his short career. I know he's young. You're absolutely right. Boston does have. Sorry, I was going to say against your point about New York. Boston has a Japanese-speaking player in Yoshida, and I think the Yankees lack that, and that gives another slight edge to Boston.
Yeah, I think it comes down to those two, maybe the Giants. But again, I think it's going to be a bidding war, and the Yankees are going to go all out because between the owner, GM, Cashman's unique GM, who actually, threw Stanton underneath the bus the other day. But the Yankees are going to win, and I think Cashman's going to do anything he can to have a winner, and I think New York's mad. So I think you're going to see that, and I don't know if they're going to get outbid for some of these guys.
I'm kind of going into the top 5 that your team's only going to get one. Obviously, that can not be true. I'm sure we saw Texas get Semien and Seager in the same year. I just think in the top 5, the wealth's got to get spread because there's a lot of slightly above average players that I'd rather have 2 of those on my team than one of them. It just depends how you share money. But we're on the same mindset so far. 2 out of 3 shared. What was I going to say about Yamamoto? Hopefully he transitions to obviously baseball well. Boston has Koji Uhara in the past, Hideki Matsui for the Yankees, so there is histories of Japanese players succeeding there. I don't see Yamamoto going to Middle America. I know there's a lot of pushes for St. Louis. I don't see it. I don't see Chicago. I know you have your right fielder Suzuki there. I think it's coast. I just think it's East or West Coast. I don't see Middle America getting him.
Very good point.
Dad, Blake Snell. I want to hear your point. You're gonna share your guess first, but Blake Snell, unique pitcher, Cy Young winner, 2-time Cy Young winner. Honestly, he's one Cy Young away from being a Hall of Famer. I mean, that's kind of weird to say, but every Cy Young winner that's won 3 or more times is in the Hall of Fame outside Roger Clemens. So if you get 3, you're kind of in. However, he led the league in walks last year. No Cy Young in history has ever got to Cy Young and led the league in walks. Typically, the best pitcher doesn't walk. So you have to be in a ballpark or have a team or have a good defense behind you. Like, for example, Blake Snell to the Phillies never made sense to me because his ERA is going to go through the roof. You have to have a pretty good defense behind you or a bigger ballpark, maybe a pitcher-friendly ballpark. He's not going to Coors Field people. So you kind of eliminate those things because you have to play a little defense with how he pitches if he's going to kind of consistently walk people. So setting that up, Dad, where's he going?
I say I'm going to Boston.
Whoa, okay. So Yamamoto or Snell to Boston
Correct.
for you.
Yes, and I did that if, Yamamoto goes to New York, they'll go full court on Blake and bring him. They'll be the ace that the Red Sox need. And I think he would like pitching there. And again, I think the Red Sox are going to spend money this year as well. And I'm thinking they're going to be in a race with a lot of these players. He makes sense in Boston just because of his background. And don't forget, with that offense, he can give up a few runs and still be in the game. I think they need him for the rotation.
I would be very happy with that if we don't get Yamamoto. Thank you for thinking that a top-end pitcher needs to go to Boston. So good logic there. I have Blake Snell in Chicago. I have one of the best defenses in baseball. You have Horner and Swanson up the middle, Gold Glovers.
And don't forget Happ.
Happ in left field. I have a reunion of a Gold Glover coming to Chicago in center. I'll give that hint away. I have a first base edition that could have potential defensive upside, but honestly, you have four current or former Gold Glovers on your team. Other positions kind of figure themselves out sometimes. But I love Blake Snell in Chicago. He replaces the Stroman aspect. I think you all need a dominant one. I don't think Justin Steele can perennially carry you as well as his season is. Kind of like Hendricks. Remember when Hendricks had his really good season?
Yeah.
And now he's kind of average.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of Steele's future. I think he's a great pitcher, though. But Blake Snell kind of is your gamer. You don't have a game winner. You never had, the last time you had someone that really wanted the ball was Lester Arrieta. And since then, it's Zambrano before that, maybe. Wood, you need, Darvish was not even a game winner in my mind. He just didn't.
It goes back to Fergie Jenkins. That was the ace of all aces for the Cubs.
I'm openly making Chicago some personalities in baseball on my list. I think, again, Yankees didn't make the playoffs. Cubs didn't make the playoffs. 2 out of my top 4 going to these foaming at the mouth teams. Boston didn't make the playoffs either, but they didn't have expectations to last year. They weren't really ever in the hunt. But the Cubs getting Snell, or again a top end pitcher, I think makes a lot of sense. But Snell, out of all these top end pitchers, made the most sense to me.
Great reasoning. Can't argue with that.
Well, it'd be fun to watch. Yeah. It's a lot of money. We know that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The Cubs got rid of 3 players, ended up being $60 million. Mm-hmm. So that's a nice hunk of change to start with. And they're not afraid to go over luxury tax. So that's a nice combination.
Yes. I'm seeing if anyone on MLB Trade Rumors said... one person said the Red Sox that, but no one said the Cubs. So we shall see.
Yeah.
We talked about Nola already being signed. 6 is Jordan Montgomery, Dad, who... we talk about free agents having just a banner year. Jordan Montgomery, showcasing in the playoffs, really an average pitcher.
What a great trade at the deadline.
Monty on the Cardinals and Monty on the Yankees was probably their 3 or 4 starter, and then now is being marketed as possibly a 1 or a strong 2.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Those teams I just mentioned have talked about reunions with them. The Yankees and St. Louis. Dad, where's he going?
Going to the Mets.
The Mets, so not a reunion team.
Not a reunion team. Mets need pitching
Mets need
desperately.
pitching, yeah.
And I think they're another team that's pissed, like you mentioned. They want to get back to the promised land. And I'm thinking with Cohen, he's saying, hey, I try to save a little money at the deadline. Hey, you got to spend that, and I want a winner. And I'm sure he was very upset as it got to be mid-season and beyond, and the Mets really struggled towards the end. There was no energy. They were just went through the motions. They're going to change that in the offseason. I think it starts with him.
I don't have any top 10 players going to the Mets. I have a bunch of one-year contracts or 1 year with the options contracts being signed by the Mets, and Cohen said we'll be competitive, which is getting those 1 year guys, and he's going to trade them all at the deadline for prospects.
Wow.
Because just like this year with Scherzer and Verlander, he's seen that's how you build a team. You don't just sign the big names in the free agency. He made that mistake early, and I think he's going to really develop a core. I think trades are coming already for New York, that they'll be active in the offseason. Of course, they'll sign a couple guys. They do have the money, but it won't be the top 10, and it won't be 2 long contracts. I think they already regret Nimmo's. They definitely let Starlin Marte's.
Especially 8 years.
Right. They don't regret Senga's, which is great because he's a really good pitcher. But everything else, I think they wish they were not so locked in on. Even Lindor's, maybe. So I have Texas. We talked about reunion teams. My thing was, well, what about Texas? Texas is a reunion team. I think he shined there. Something clicked in Texas. I think if Texas offers him anything close, he resigns. I don't know where he's from. Openly, I think some people were talking about geographic preferences. I think Jordan really liked pitching in Texas. He has a World Series ring there. We see a lot of comparison between him and Nate Eovaldi. Just worked out that they're on the same staff this year. Eovaldi went to free agency right after he won in 2018 with the Red Sox. He had a lot of offers, but he ultimately wanted to stay with Boston because that's the team he won with. I think Jordan Montgomery's free agency is the same. If he hadn't won a World Series, if Eovaldi didn't win a World Series, they'd be, the Seth Lugos on this list, where you kind of have to look up how good was his year? What did he do again? So Jordan Montgomery, I think, stays with Texas. Those other 2 teams make some sense. I don't see the Mets. Our first, hard disagree on that one. And I also don't think he's as good as last year. But with a team like the Rangers pitching staff, he can be a 2 or 3 starter.
Oh, good thinking with all that. And you know what? The Rangers, have the money. They've, have proven they are not afraid to spend money. Mm-hmm. So it probably could be a good fit. But again, it's going to be how long a contract does he need and want? So those are the keys.
Chappie, Matt Chapman, Dad, the third baseman, better known for his glove work than his offense, but still hits the ball okay. Where's he going?
There's a glaring hole in Chicago at third base this year.
Uh-huh.
And they have 3 Gold Glove winners now. Mm-hmm. Chapman becomes the 4th.
He's one of my finalists for Chicago. I understand that. They could afford him, especially if they don't get Snell. I like it. I would not be surprised. I don't know if... I'm trying to think of who my third baseman is for... Oh, I do remember who my third baseman was for the Cubbies. It's a trade piece. We'll get to that in the offseason outlook. But anyways, I have the San Francisco Giants. That is their franchise player. He's from California. We'll talk about geographic preferences. I think it's Victorville. Anyways, Chapman going to San Francisco is that stable third baseman. They haven't had a stable third baseman since Pablo Sandoval.
And he wasn't that stable.
No, he was good when he was young.
Yes.
But defensively, they are losing Brandon Crawford. Now they have Marco Luciano coming up. He's young. Chapman could kind of show Luciano the works. I'm pretty sure Chapman used to be a shortstop in high school or college. And I really think that supplants that. He's a team guy. He can be a team leader. It's a kind of a young team. There's a lot of... Already they got a new manager in. Kapler's out. And I think Chapman could really benefit from being such a stable part of that infield. I think what helped him so much in Oakland was he was one of the best players on the team, him and Olsen. When he went to Toronto, he wasn't even like the top 5 best player. Like you have so many people above him at different points.
Especially offensively.
Personalities, like the attention. I mean, Guerrero, Bo Bichette. Now you're dealing with Alek Manoah stuff.
Yeah.
Like George Springer in the like. There's constantly a rotation of almost stars or maybe attention above you. And I think Chapman kind of wants to be back on the West Coast where he was with Oakland. Immediately a fan base there. I think it's just a smart signing by San Francisco. I would not be surprised if the Cubs beat him out for money, especially if the Cubs don't get Snell. Then I almost kind of think my pick is now in the least likely chance of happening because more money is now available for Chapman.
Yeah, but one of the things Cubs love is having a defensive team to, not let, 4 outs per inning to go and all that stuff. They accomplished that this year. They just ran out of juice, but their whole all year was third base and first base for the most part. He fills one of those needs in an infield that is very, very good right now.
Yeah, it's a great infield.
So, yeah.
Number 8, Dad, is a closer. Baltimore native Josh Hader. Very similar pass as Edwin Diaz. Fun to say that Diaz will be back this year with the Mets.
Get the horns ready.
Get some energy back in New York, especially in 2025. Where's Hader going?
He's an East Coast guy.
He is.
And he used to play for the manager of the Milwaukee Brewers, who's now in Chicago.
Yes.
But he's not going there.
Okay.
He's going
head fake. A little head pump there.
He's going to go to the Phillies.
Phillies are one of my finalists for him. Keep talking.
No, I think the Phillies are a little upset that they didn't make the World Series again. Mm-hmm. They're looking at the holes that they have. One of the holes is probably
Kimbrel.
Okay, I need not say more. And I think he would love to come back to the East Coast where his roots are. And I'm thinking he'd be a great fit in Philly and would really boost that team. So they're really competing with Atlanta during the regular season. I can see a perfect fit in Philly.
I like that pick. I know everyone talks about like financials and blah, 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 blah. Phillies, like I said, they're hungry too. They didn't make the World Series. I think they do go for bullpen help this year, but I don't think they get a closer. I think they promote from within. I like Hader to Texas. I know what I said that the first top 5 aren't getting any of the same teams, but again, Montgomery and Hader in the bottom 5 of the top 10. I think Hader gets $20 million a year. Jordan Montgomery probably gets something similar. They have a lot of money from the World Series. Their payroll just got boosted. They want to repeat. They want to... Chris Young as the GMs just thought my work made sense. Buying Simeon and Seager and making these trades at the right time happen. We had to be aggressive in free agency when we were. I think he stays aggressive, and it's not a one-and-done type of thing for Texas. I think we do see almost like as the Houston Astros dynasty fades a little bit, as Altuve and Bregman and Kyle Tucker and Yordan Alvarez all hit free agency, I think the Texas Rangers kind of take over in Texas as like another 5-6 year dynasty.
Yeah.
So I have to the Rangers, and Leclerc doesn't have to look at Altuve's home run balls over his head anymore, and he can just go back to a 7th or 8th inning role. Josh Hader, Texas Rangers.
Good thinking.
Sonny Gradad is one of the more perplexing names on the list. I had like a bunch of names written, and then I erased some stuff. I had more names written. He could go to really anybody. Anyone that's looking for a pitcher, which is really dangerous. He's not an ace. He had a good year as a Cy Young, candidate. I think he's a 2 on most squads, or 3 if your squad is like a very good pitching team. Where do you have him going?
You know what? The Cincinnati Reds are on record saying they want to get signed 2 or 3 starting pitchers. I think Sonny ends up in Cincinnati to be a reunion with that team, and I think they know him. He had good years with Cincinnati. Cincinnati now has a much better offensive team. I think he's a perfect fit for the Reds. One
of the names I considered, I certainly have a soft spot in my heart for the Reds because of Griffey. I don't have them getting like a top pitcher though. I think they get some.
compete in the Central, they're going to have to spend some money.
I'm not saying they're good. Just get to the wild card. I don't think the Reds win the Central.
They were close.
They were close. They had a phenomenal year. I have the Atlanta Braves. It originally was going to be Jack Flaherty to the Atlanta Braves. And then I went, no, I think they're going to, all these like trades and these non-tenders of their Soroka, Kyle Wright, pitchers of their past that are now injured, like they got rid of these smaller contracts because they didn't care about 2025 or 2026. They're pushing for 2024. They're hosting the All-Star game in 2025 now. They want to have a dominant pitching staff. This is the last year of Charlie Morton. He's 40. He's going to retire at the end of this year. They kind of need that 3-slot, 2-slot replacement behind Morton. And I think Sonny Gray is the guy. I can see them honestly linked. Like I said, Shohei Ohtani makes sense there. Yamamoto could make sense. So could Monty. So could Eduardo Rodriguez. I do think, or Lucas Giolito, I think they do get a top-tier pitching name. And for some reason, Sonny Gray maybe just isn't as sexy or just isn't as well-known. I think they're able to get him for just another one of those team-friendly Atlanta Braves contracts. And he slots right into the pitching staff. And if there's an injury, Sonny Gray could be a hero in Atlanta.
But it's interesting about Atlanta. You always get to work early. Every year they really sign people.
They already have been to work.
I know that. Yeah. But every year, right out of the World Series, they go and they start signing people before anybody else does. So, via trades, whatever, that GM does not sit and go, let's wait till after Thanksgiving. Boom, he goes to work right away. So I'm thinking if it's going to happen to the Braves, it's going to happen in the next 2 weeks.
I agree. Fully agree. They could also trade. I have them as a very possible target for a Tyler Glasnow trade, too.
He's out there.
Who's to say they can't get both? Because they're that nuts.
And they got the farm system.
Yeah. And by the way, the NL East will be won by the Braves, with or without Sonny Gray or with or without Glasnow. Phillies just don't give a shit anymore about winning the East. They'll just get it. They'll
hang around.
They'll take a wild card team. And I think if you talk to Philly players and Philly fans, they're fine with that. They just need to make. They're not trying to win 101 games anymore like the Braves. They can't.
Yeah.
And they're okay. They're okay with that. Give us the wild card. It's worked out for us 2 years in a row. We've been to the CS. So I think they're fine with that. Dad, our second Asian name on this list, Shada Amanaga. A little older than Yamamoto. I think he's 30. Good pitcher. Just kind of like properly a notch down. Doesn't have the same ERA. Doesn't have the same kind of stuff. But a lot of people like him in terms of he's 30, so he's a little bit more established. He hasn't had a major injury yet. And he has a little bit better endurance. Again, Yamamoto's young. Could there be an injury at 27, 28? Kind of like how Shohei got, needs Tommy John. Amanaga, a little bit more weathered, if that makes any sense, a little bit more seasoned. Dad, where would Amanaga head to?
He's on record saying he wants to play a major city and with Japanese players on the roster and everything else.
They all say that, but yeah.
I think he ends up with the Cubs. The Cubs could use another left-handed starter in the rotation. I think he fits that bill very well. Again, with the new direction of the Cubs, with new management and everything else, they're going to build that pitching staff because that's Council's forte, is managing a pitching staff and really getting the most out of their starters and bullpen. I think he ends up in Chicago.
I was down to two markets. I was down to New York, the Mets, or San Francisco Giants. The Mets have Senga, but then I remembered, nope, Mets are going to trade pieces. They're not going to be in on them as much as I thought. This is the sorry we didn't get Shohei or Aaron Judge or Carlos Correa, but we got Matt Chapman and Shada Amanaga. San Francisco Giants. Again, I don't think there's any Asian players on San Francisco currently, but that is a marketable city. That is a West Coast, close to Japan. It's a team that needs pitching. Outside Logan Webb, it's kind of rough. It's kind of rough out there. Logan Webb is kind of at the point of his career where he's discontent. I don't know if it's past tense. Where he said, we need a winning attitude or I'm out. And he's a perennial Cy Young candidate. So either Logan Webb gets traded when this team is going like 50 and 70 at the deadline, or they really shape up this offseason and get some of these front-end free agents, such as Matt Chapman and Amanaga. So I have San Francisco making a splash, being competitive, openly seeing the San Diego Padres as weakened, and trying for second place in the NL West, obviously behind LA.
They had a really good start of the year, and they were doing quite well, and then all of a sudden, slowly, they kind of fell apart. I don't know if that was injuries or other things, but again, they have some talent. And again, it's the West Coast thing, so who knows? There's things going on with Seattle and San Francisco that the Japanese players like, but we'll see what kind of finances they have.
I'm not saying they win second place either. I think Arizona obviously is going to make a great push for that again, but I think the competition is going to be between San Francisco and Arizona, and I don't think San Diego is going to be really in it this year. I think they made a lot of mistakes, and I think we'll get to them in the offseason outlook. But none of us has said San Diego for any of these teams, and I think that's indicative of how we feel about their future. Dad, our last top 10 name, I was obviously number 11 on the list, but for our purposes, is Eduardo Rodriguez, a lefty starter. Been around a couple teams. Obviously started his career in Baltimore as a minor leaguer, got traded to Boston, then did Detroit. Rumors at the deadline, never went anywhere. Had a deal in place to LA, declined it. Dad, where does he go this offseason?
Tell me the reason why he declined to trade.
At the time, he said he wanted to be closer to family on the East Coast. I agree.
I think he goes to Cincinnati.
So kind of staying in that area.
Correct. Okay. Apparently, his roots are in the middle part of the United States, and that's where he wants to stay for family reasons. So again, if you look at the teams that could use a pitcher, which is quite a few teams out of there, the Reds make some sense. I think they need a left-handed starter, so I just thought that would make a perfect fit. He stays in the middle of the United States and pitches for a good franchise working its way up.
I have one signing by this team, or at least one major signing, all offseason, and they're getting Eduardo Rodriguez, and that's the Baltimore Orioles.
Whoa, going back to the roots.
Talk about roots. He did start there. He was traded for, I believe, Andrew Miller. That was a bad trade for the Orioles, and I think they know that. John Means should be healthy all year. They do need a lefty complement in that rotation. And I think they get Rodriguez on a pretty good deal where he can be there. They do need a pitcher with playoff experience, and Rodriguez has a ring. Not just experience, but has won with Boston in 2018. So I think that matters greatly. No other pitcher on their current roster has any playoff experience, but I think they sign Rodriguez, but they also trade for someone that also has some playoff experience. We'll get to that shortly. But that is my prediction. So you got Reds. You really think Cincinnati's going to grab a couple. I love it. You got Gray and Eduardo.
Yeah, okay. I mean, they're on record saying they want 2 to 3 top-notch pitchers to compete. They're going for the division lead.
It's a small market.
But at the same time...
They declined Votto's option in order to save like $6 million.
But at the same time, if they put a winner in Cincinnati, I think that increases their revenue. That's a good baseball town.
It's a great baseball town. I just don't think they have money for a top 10. I could be wrong, but sure, they'll sign some people. I just don't have a big name by, our standards, at least today, going to Cincinnati in free agency. They have a great team. They have a great future.
They have a fun team.
They have a lot of fun team, and I think it's fit's important, not just like throwing in Gray or Rodriguez, but fit is super important. Yeah. So we had the first two combined, Dad. We'd share that, and then we had everything else different from there on out.
What else is new?
I like it, though. I mean, it's not boring. It gives two different perspectives to our listeners. We did roughly 4 minutes a name, which is great. So if you're a fan of one of these players, you got to hear kind of the logic of our thought process. Sorry that if your team did not get mentioned.
They will.
I'm sure they will. Openly, Colorado will not get mentioned by me. I don't have Colorado ever getting someone.
Or Oakland.
Or Tampa Bay. I don't think I have Tampa Bay signing anybody.
But they always win.
I'm rooting against them always. But yeah, and I also don't have Oakland. Yeah, I don't have those three teams signing anyone of significance. But yeah, so those are our top 10 names. Before you turn on to the next video, which will be the next 40, get yourself a drink. It's going to be a long video. Thank you for watching. We'll tell you this at the end of each video today. We're going to record 8 in total, so we're going to be loopy by the end of today. It might get darker behind us as the day goes on. But like the video, please subscribe to us. This is our busiest day of the year. Most uploads. So please subscribe and then follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. We are at Pastime Podcast _ and the Father and Son Pastime Podcast on Facebook. So thank you and enjoy the rest of our videos.
Thanks for watching.